A new record, Michael, has been achieved at the box office by Godzilla vs Kong. And what record is that, Michael?
Well, it's the best kind of record, a pandemic record, with a box office of a $48.5 million debut.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. 48 hours, $48.5 million. I mean, yeah, I never thought I'd see the phrase "a new pandemic record," but credit to Godzilla and Kong as well. We can't forget him. He was part of it as well. Yeah, getting it done. Also, some more big news, Michael. I know you're a massive fan of Rian Johnson, aren't you?
Yes, I love Rian Johnson.
You love The Last Jedi. You love Knives Out, and on the Knives Out front, Netflix near a $400 million deal for Knives Out 2 and 3. Daniel Craig and director Rian Johnson are reprising. And yeah, it's just a shame we can't get a Last Jedi 2 and 3 as well. That'll never happen. But at least we can get Knives Out.
Yeah, I'm looking for in Knives Out, Daniel Craig's going to decide actually being a detective's for losers, and he's going to throw his detecting, glasses, whatever he has, over his shoulder.
Oh yeah, because he's past it. That would really subvert the expectations. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that's it. Some good news. Oh, also Space Jam, A New Legacy with LeBron James looks absolutely god awful. But yeah, we'll see what happens when it comes out. Anyway, let's get into Ford v Ferrari, Michael.
Hello, and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Luke. And this week, we are, again, continuing our Oscar Spectacular by looking at all of the films nominated for Best Picture last year in advance of the Oscar ceremony. And today, we are going to be looking at Ford vs. Ferrari. So, Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Ford vs. Ferrari?
Yeah, thank God you managed to remember that, Michael.
Yes.
It could have been Ford versus Lamborghini, or it could have been Nissan versus Toyota. It could have been Kia versus Vauxhall, but no, it's Ford versus Ferrari. So well done. Jeep. Why did you say Jeep?
I want to see Jeep. Jeep versus Audi.
Jeep would it be Jeep versus Land Rover? That'd be better, I think.
Oh wow, that would be like the Godzilla vs Kong of the car cinematic universe.
Yeah. Anyway, Ford versus Ferrari, and if you think about it, Godzilla is probably Ferrari and Ford is Kong, right? Because Kong was in America and Godzilla wasn't. So yeah, yes. There we go. Anyway, Ford v Ferrari, titled Le Mans 66 in some European countries. That wasn't a title in this European country. Maybe it was just France. I don't know, but yeah, I think Ford versus Ferrari is a pretty enticing movie title, considering Ferrari and Ford are two incredibly famous brands.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like Le Mans, that sounds like it's going to be about men.
Yeah, sounds very gay, if you ask me. It's a 2019 American sports drama film directed by James Mangold and written by Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, and Jason Keller. I wonder if there's any relation between the Butterworths, maybe. The film stars Matt Damon, Christian Bale, John Bernthal, what is this name? Kate Triona Balfe.
Okay.
Nailed it. See, you think it's maybe Kat, but it's not. It's Kate Triona. So that screwed me over a bit. Tracy Letts, Josh Lucas, Noah Jupe, Remo Giron, and Ray McKinnon, who was in a supporting role. The movie was released on November the 15th, 2019, in the United States of America. And Michael, can you tell me what the budget was? And of course, last week we had a big,
no.
Yeah, I don't know what the correct phrase.
A
snafu, a controversy surrounding you getting the budget and the box office quite a bit wrong. Well, it wasn't your worst guess on reflecting upon it. It was just at the time. You should know what, like Jojo Rabbit, what the box office should be. You guessed too high in each of them, and it was just very frustrating for me. So Ford versus Ferrari, Michael. What are you going to guess? A lot of pressure on you here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the thing is, like, what I'm growing to realize is that the cast is the best way to go. And with this said, obviously, Matt Damon and Christian Bale are quite big people. They're certainly bigger than, whoever played Jojo Rabbit. And yet at the same time, the other issue is I feel like Matt Damon and Christian Bale are the kind of people who don't necessarily like insist upon very high salaries, but I want to go for
I know that about them too.
That's what I thought, because like I feel like they're kind of people who do it for the craft.
No, I was
they're
joking.
Not like Robert Downey Jr.
I was joking. I have no idea about Christian Bale and Matt Damon, particularly Matt Damon, because he's in a lot big plots.
Yeah, Matt Damon less so, but with Christian Bale I kind of feel like he'd be somebody who like, you know, he does it because he likes the script, I'd imagine. Yeah, but obviously that's not to say he's above asking for money.
That era of his career when he is over, really, with Dark Knight Rises. Yeah,
exactly, getting the bank. But with that said, I feel like they would I have it in my head, so I'll say it, 50 million.
50 million. So Michael, I may start doing this because of the fact
you
that
predicted it yourself.
Because it's just interesting, and of course there's no way for you to verify this, but I thought it'd be around 70 million. It was actually 97 million.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. It is a lot, and I guess it was just the cars involved.
I was thinking that too.
The action scenes, the actors, like it's a 2.5-hour movie. I can imagine this kind of movie costing a lot of money. Anyway, Michael, the budget basically 100 million. Can you tell me what the box office was?
Well, I had this idea in my head that this film kind of underperformed, like not like kind of, you know, dramatically, but now having heard that it was that much at the box office, I feel like maybe I did hear that it kind of underperformed relative to that budget, but I kind of heard like it barely made its money back. So I guess let's say I'm kind of thinking like obviously there's a rule of like it's like double for marketing. So I'm kind of thinking like let's say 100 million, double that, it just made its money back. So let's say 200 million.
When did you hear it underperformed, by the way?
You know, actually, see, I think what I might have heard it from is that I saw a video called Biggest Box Office Bombs of, like, you know, 2019, and I didn't watch the video, but I'm pretty sure this film was in the thumbnail.
Well, it shouldn't be.
Oh, it could have been a clickbait, to be honest. It could have been people might click on like, oh, that. Like, I didn't watch the video, like I say, and it was by one of those kind of like, you know, top 10 ranker videos or channels, so I that's why I didn't watch it. But yeah,
it didn't make massive because you know you got the doubling rule for marketing, so probably over 200 million would be a profit, and it did make over 200 million. So I don't know if it can't. That's not a box office bomb if it makes a profit. We can assume it made a profit because the box office was 225 million.
Yeah, maybe it was a bomb because of all the cars exploding.
Probably that was it. Yeah, I'm guessing. So yeah, 225 million, decent return for the budget. Probably making an okay profit, but of course, you know, this movie, it was nominated for Best Picture, which is of course why we are doing it at the 2020 Oscars. It received 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, like I said, and 1 Best Film Editing and Best Sound Editing. And it was the last Academy Award for Best Sound Editing before the award was combined with Best Sound Mixing as a single award for Best Sound, which is something they should have done ages ago. Because it's just, like, that's the thing. I feel like a lot of years, just Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Editing, it was just won by the same movie. So, Best Sound is better. And it cuts down on another award. So that's what we like to see. And yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do. Bale also received nominations for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, but did not get nominated for an Academy Award for this one. And Michael, all of that is interesting, but what's even more interesting is, did you, Michael, like this movie?
This film was a good film. It wasn't a fantastic film. It wasn't like a particularly challenging film. You know, it wasn't some great art house film. But you know what it was, Luke? It was a good film. I mean, I actually kind of gave that away to you up front a bit when I said like that I was actually, and I'm not necessarily saying this film is perfectly paced, but genuinely the first time I watched this film, I didn't come out of it thinking that it lasted 2.5 hours, which is why I, as you know, didn't realize when I went to rewatch this film until I actually checked the time that it was 2.5 hours. So I guess that's kind of, you know, doesn't speak to its quality necessarily, but it was exciting and I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
what about you?
It speaks to its quality a bit, considering you know time just flew by. And I'd also say yes, this is a really solid, good movie. And of course, Michael, you know I'm interested in cars, or motorsport to be more specific. So this movie was kind of enjoyable to me. I mentioned it actually in the Cold Open last week. We were talking about the 1966 movie Grand Prix. And, of course, this movie also set in 1966. And it was also, of course, a racing movie. So, I like that. And I enjoyed quite a lot of aspects about it that perhaps somebody who wasn't that interested in motorsport wouldn't. But, you know, I'm going to try and be unbiased. My love for my love for racing isn't going to influence what I feel about the movie. I hope. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like a decent number of films, they can be good regardless of your opinion on the sport. Because
like Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Any Given Sunday. I was thinking of The Wrestler by Darren Aronofsky.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing. I remember when we did Any Given Sunday, and of course it's not as critically like it wasn't nominated for Best Picture or anything. But that's a sport movie. It's about the NFL, a sport that I also enjoy. And we watched it, and you really didn't like it. You thought it was awful. And I was like, maybe I'm just biased by the fact that I like the NFL, that I was more interested in it. I thought you would be too. Like, it gets you into the world of the NFL and shows you all the stuff that happens. But yeah, apparently wasn't. But anyway, so let's get into the nitpicks for Ford v Ferrari. Michael, how many do you have?
Well, I want to attribute this to the fact that I don't know much about cars, because I just felt like a lot of this film went over my head in a way, and as such I didn't get any nitpicks. Like, there was no point where I sat there going like, well, that's not how that would be in real life, because I was kind of like, as someone who doesn't know much about this.
Okay, well,
what about you?
I've got a lit pick and a nitpick. Yeah, so my nitpick, it's not to do with the cars, it's to do with the fact that Ken Miles' son, Ken Miles of course played by Christian Bale, Ken Miles' son doesn't age between 1963 and 66. So that's when the movie starts, 63, ends in 66, 3-year period. He just stays at around 12 years old for that whole 3-year period. And yeah, I appreciate that can be difficult for the director to get around.
What do you think it says, Boyhood?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I just like, he's still a 12-year-old kid, 3 years on. Great. Anyway, so my lit pick, Michael. Dan Gurney, Chris Amon, John Surtees, Von Trips, Phil Hill, Bruce McLaren. Those, I just love hearing those names.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Dan Gurney, Chris Amon, considered probably the best driver to never win a Formula One race. He's in this. I can't remember what capacity. Maybe he was racing for Ford one year. I can't remember. I think so. But yeah, he never won a race. And I remember this quote from Mario Andretti, Formula One world champion of 1978, who said about Chris Amon that if Chris Amon was so unlucky that if he had been an undertaker, people would stop dying because he's that unlucky. Which I like that quote.
That's a good quote.
Yeah. Phil Hill, the first American F1 champion, he was in the first race. I can't remember what track they were at, but the first race where Ken Miles wins on the last corner. Drove probably one of the most dominant cars in F1 history, which was a Ferrari back in '64, I want to say. Bruce McLaren, who founded the McLaren F1 team. He, of course, wins Le Mans in '66. He's there, and he founded the McLaren team, which is still going today, of course. Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, the drivers for them in Formula One. And John Surtees, he was mentioned as well. He, of course, drove for Ferrari and won a world championship for them. The only ever person to win a world championship on 2 wheels, a motorcycle, and 4 wheels in a Formula One car. Von Trips as well, he was mentioned. Just great to hear all of these names, and I thoroughly loved it. Just going back and hearing all these famous drivers' names.
Like an Easter egg.
Yeah, like they were constant Easter eggs, and even Bruce McLaren was actually in it. So Michael, let us. You've got nothing else, of course, because you don't have any, right?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't that excited to hear of Von Trips. I think now you were mentioning the names, I did kind of recognize them, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm so excited.
Oh yeah. Anyway. So let's get into the plot, though. The plot follows a determined team of American and British engineers and designers, led by automotive designer Carroll Shelby and his British driver, Ken Miles, who are dispatched by Henry Ford II and Lee Iacocca, there we go, with the mission of building the Ford GT40, a new racing car with the potential to finally defeat the perennially dominant Italian racing team, Scuderia Ferrari, at the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans race in France. That's in France. Do you know what Scuderia means, by the way, Michael?
Like skedaddle, but in Italian.
No, it doesn't. Scuderia. That's the thing. I don't know why. It means stable, basically, and I guess it's because. Of course, Ferrari's logo is like the prancing horse back in the day. Like, it's a name used for like all Italian racing teams, like Scuderia, and I guess it's just transformed into meaning race team because Ferrari used to call their team that. So there you go. Michael, Le Mans racing, right up my street. And of course, I want to say first off, of course, what Ford are trying to do at the start of the movie is, they're struggling to sell cars. And they accurately depict how, we've got these kids growing up. They want to drive like fast cars. They want to drive cool cars. It's the 60s, They want to be like James Bond, on all of that stuff. But Ford just isn't James Bond, And I like how it accurately depicts how the car companies get into the sport or get into motor racing in general. It's like it is basically just a massive marketing campaign, motorsport. The most expensive marketing exercise in the world. Mercedes in Formula One pouring like $350 million or pounds, I think it's actually pounds, per year into their Formula One team. And Ferrari even more, and there is a budget cap now actually, so that's changed a bit. But before this last year, they did. And yeah, Ferrari don't even have to market their cars because it's the only marketing they need is Formula One. And basically just it's colossally expensive marketing, but if you find success, it is worth it so much. I remember back in like 2005 and 6 when Renault were Formula One world champions, and I of course I was too young to ever buy a car back then, but I was like, oh, Renault are cool now because they've won world championships with Fernando Alonso. I don't know, my brain just thought that, and of course the reason why people have such an affinity with Ferrari was because of the success they had. But yeah, of course, Ferrari, that's the thing with Ferrari. They didn't actually start going into motorsport because of marketing. Of course, after, they start selling cars and, the motorsport becomes a way to market their cars. But yeah, Enzo Ferrari, he just wanted to race. And that's what makes him and Ferrari quite unique. But for example, Ford, Mercedes, pretty much any other car company, they get into sport or motorsport because of marketing. So yeah, I just want to say, it's accurate how that was depicted, basically. To
be honest, that is actually an aspect of racing that I like. Like I say, I don't like racing. It's one of the many things in life which I don't really enjoy directly, but I like the idea of it existing, and I do kind of like the idea that these companies they've taken this boring, like you don't get this with like the iPhone and stuff, but taking this thing of like developing and innovating new technology and kind of new mechanisms to obviously make their cars faster and better and things like that, and then they've turned it into like a sport. Like I think that, like I say, you don't get that with the iPhone. No. They don't have. Although maybe with the rise of esports, we'll see like kind of computer companies being like, we've developed the fastest gaming PC. It can allow somebody to play, I don't know, the NFL game much faster.
Yeah, but it doesn't really work though, does it?
Yeah, no, yeah. It does. But yeah, with cars, it is interesting, and I do agree.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's the key. That's the reason why. I mean, Iacocca, there we go. Iacocca nails it when he's like, what does Ferrari mean? It means victory. That's what it means, because they win these races, because they win in Formula One, because they win at Le Mans, and that's why people want to buy their cars. I remember hearing a stat about Mercedes, because of course, if you'll know, a bit about Formula One, Mercedes have been very dominant in F1 over the recent years, and of course Lewis Hamilton has won several world championships, and because of that, Mercedes has gone from not being considered like a sports car, basically like a luxury car brand, to now in the year like 2020 they're considered a sports car because of all the success they've had in Formula One, and their brand value has increased because of that. Nothing to do with the cars they're producing, just because of the success of their Formula One team. I'm talking about car companies. I mean, you've heard of Red Bull in Formula One, haven't you, Michael?
Yeah, of course, yes.
They're a soft drinks company. What the hell are they doing in Formula One? It's just marketing. Like it's just
exactly.
Yeah, it's just pure marketing. Like Red Bull, they're spending hundreds of millions of pounds on a Formula One car.
I want to see a film about that actually.
Yeah, they're not. That's the thing. They're not even selling cars. They're selling.
Unfortunately, Red Bull wouldn't have been able to include the line about 130 beats per minute being dangerous, because that's what their energy drinks do.
That's a good one. Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like it's a massive marketing thing, and that's why Ford get into it. And yeah, Ferrari is that special brand. And yeah, victory. That's what Ferrari do. It's a perfect encapsulation of what Ferrari is and why Enzo Ferrari is such a legend in motorsport. I will say this about Enzo Ferrari. Even though he is a legend, he perhaps said, well, he said this quote, which it's quite funny. I can't. I'm going to paraphrase, but he said, aerodynamics, of course, like downforce and all that. Aerodynamics is for people who can't build engines. And that turned out to be possibly the most incorrect thing anyone has ever said in motorsport history. He said that like in the mid-1960s, and then aerodynamics took off in the following decades and has become the most important thing in motorsport. So yeah, apart from that, absolute legend, Michael. And I'm sure you can, as someone who's into Formula One, you can appreciate, just as a casual person, the how special Ferrari is, right?
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, they've got that cool logo.
What is the logo?
It's like a horse.
Yeah,
It's like the black horse on a yellow background or something.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why they call it the prancing horse.
Yeah. Ah,
yeah.
I thought it was because of they liked the prancing pony in Lord of the Rings.
I don't think it was that. No, I don't think Enzo Ferrari read. Maybe he did read the Lord of the Rings. I don't know. But anyway, so back to the movie. So Ford,
yes,
they realize, hey, we gotta get into selling or basically making fast cars because that's going to help our marketing. So they want to strike a bargain with Ferrari, and yeah, I do wonder how different Ferrari would look today and the world of motorsport would do if they wanted to strike this deal, because this did actually happen in real life. But of course, Enzo insults Ford and says that Henry Ford is fat and all the executives are sons of whores, like they've got no soul. And yeah, the difference between Ford and Ferrari is illustrated perfectly with that. I mean, he insults them, but he does get it right. It's like, Ferrari is a company that values the glamour and beauty, whereas Ford, he said, like, these big ugly factories building these big ugly cars, and yeah, that's a perfect encapsulation, like two very possibly the two most different car companies you can imagine.
Yeah.
And
although arguably Ferrari would be more the whores then, because they're the ones who dole themselves up to court the rich businessmen, whereas Ford is just an industrious young entrepreneur out there, just focusing on the digits.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he thought so much about
that should have been my nitpick, shouldn't it?
Yeah, but no, he's right, and they are two very different animals, and so yeah, that's why of course he goes with Fiat to maintain control, and yeah, apparently in real life, he did insult Henry Ford, saying you're not going to be you're not going to be the original Henry Ford because you're not anti-Semitic, you're not racist enough. That's what he said, and that inspired Henry Ford to get more anti-Semitic, and that's how it. No, obviously that's not what happened. He instead decided to create a Ford racing division and race at Le Mans. So this Ford guy, the marketing guy, goes to Matt Damon, and Matt Damon eloquently tells him about racing in Le Mans. And what did you think of that scene, Michael? Did you enjoy that when Matt Damon tells him about it?
Yeah. I thought it was good. I liked a lot of the kind of I guess this film, it does build into this idea of like a poetry around like the idea of achieving these speeds, and I think that's really, it's good, and I think it does help kind of to connect with the, for somebody who doesn't really like the sport or doesn't really care about the sport, to connect with it by seeing how much these people, care about it and their enthusiasm for it.
Yeah,
I think that's very well communicated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and he's, as someone who knows about motorsport a bit, he's exactly right about how mental Le Mans is and how incredibly, dangerous it is and brave you have to be. I mean, you saw, Michael, of course, some of the scenes where he's like crashing into hay bales. And how there isn't I love back in the day there wasn't a separation between the pit stops and the actual racing track. You just pulled over to the side.
Oh yeah, but they were like so slow at pit stops back then. Like it was insane.
Yeah, but I think that's true. But what's even more insane is just the lack of separation. And I look at old races in F1 or indeed Le Mans, and you can't believe, I guess, how just stupid it was. Like how the lack of safety was, for lack of a better term, it was just utterly stupid. And, I don't know if it was because, the World War II had just happened like a couple of decades ago, so people had a lax attitude towards death, or I have no idea. But yeah, it's just like how crazy it was that they didn't put in measures to stop people from dying. I mean, do you know what happened in Le Mans in 1955, Michael?
Okay, yeah. See, I think it's probably like something about like a car. I know there was a story about a car that kind of like flipped and it like landed into the crowd.
Yes. How do you know
that? I think it's just one of those things where like I heard about it, just through osmosis.
Yeah, well, you are correct. That's what did happen, and it was a Mercedes car, Mercedes racing at Le Mans, and yeah, basically this car flipped up and crashed. And do you want to guess how many spectators it killed while it launched itself into the crowd?
7.
80.
Wow.
Yep.
That's just wow. 80.
80. Yep.
That seems like a lot.
And do you know what the craziest thing that happened after that car killed 80 spectators right next to the track?
The race kept going.
The race kept going.
Okay.
Indeed it did.
Wow. That is a huge number. That's funny because there was a you probably don't know about this. There was like an air show crash. I think it was like in 1954. It was near where I am. That's the main reason I know about it. And it only killed like 4 people. And you think like, how can a plane? But like it was a kind of like an air show, and it crashed into the crowd. And you think, how can a plane crash into a crowd and only kill 4 people, and then a car can kill 80? Like my only guess is that it just kind of rolled for ages. Do they have any videos of that crash? Because it sounds crazy. Far be it from me to have morbid curiosity.
No, I watched those videos of that crash. They do, and what happened was basically the car flips up, and basically it breaks, and a load of parts like fly off the car, and this is why it killed so many people, because basically it like decapitated quite a few people, like parts just flying through the air.
Wow. And that sounds like Final Destination.
Yeah, I mean it was, and that's the crazy thing, was the race just continued, and of course it's a famous crash. There's actually an animated short about it on YouTube if you want to see it, basically that's the race that meant Mercedes were pulling out, or it caused Mercedes to pull out of Formula One. Oh, sorry, not Formula One, Le Mans. It caused Mercedes to pull out of any form of racing since their car had been involved in that accident, but I think they were already planning to anyway. That just like quickened things. And racing for Mercedes that day was it was Fangio, Juan Manuel Fangio and Sir Stirling Moss. Have you heard of Stirling Moss or?
No, I'm afraid I haven't.
You haven't heard of Stirling Moss? Wow,
I kind of recognise his name, but it's probably just because you said it.
Well, the reason why I'm saying those famous names is because that was just famous drivers who were involved in these crashes that killed 80 spectators, and the race just continued, and that's what was crazy about racing back in the day. I will say so Matt Damon, when he's eloquently describing how bad things were, or how crazy like Le Mans is, because it is just that it's like a back then especially, it's just like racing through country roads with like no runoff. So if your brakes fail, you can get 200 miles an hour. It's probably over for you. And he said it's not just turn left. You don't just turn left like they do in American tracks. Those oval races. It's actually got corners, Michael. It's actually got corners where you have to brake for. Crazy, I know.
Yeah, because aren't a lot of like NASCAR races just circles?
Yeah,
that's so lame.
They're ovals. I know. I don't see how that can be exciting.
Yeah, but because like the thing I know about NASCAR is like people are always excited for the crashes, but it's kind of like, how many crashes can there even be when you just got to drive in a circle?
Quite a few actually, because they can't slow down. So if somebody hits somebody up ahead, and then you've got and that's the thing, NASCAR, that all the cars are often tightly packed, closely together. So if one, think about it, it's like a chain reaction. If one hits one, then the rest just can't brake, can't slow down. There's no runoff to the right hand side because there's a fucking wall. So you can only hit the cars in front of you.
Actually, that sounds like the worst thing ever, which isn't surprising, because basically my beef, as you know, with a lot of motorsports is I think they're all driving so fast that it doesn't even look like any of them are individually driving that fast. And this seems like one of those things where, like with NASCAR, it's probably the case that they're driving really, really fast, but it probably doesn't even look like they're driving that fast from like a bird's eye sort of film view.
No. That is an issue, I think, more generally with motorsport, is how to convey the speed of the cars. Because if you do that, then you don't get good shots of them. Because if you're just following them with a camera, then you can't tell how fast a car's going. That is a decent criticism. But anyway, Matt Damon also, he's wrong on one fact, Michael. He says money can't buy speed. And that's, of course, in the end it does, because Ford win Le Mans 5 years in a row. But, I don't know why he says that, because the fact is money is the reason why speed exists. Money is the reason why people can go so fast. And so he's like, I don't know if you can beat Ferrari. It's like, yeah, you can if you just pour millions and millions of pounds in. You can.
Yeah, that's true.
And they eventually did. So I don't know why he made it seem like such an uphill task. If you got a bunch of money, just outspend the competition. And as the thing, motorsport, it's a sport, yes, but it's also a sport about who has the most money. That is also a part of it too. So anyway, they start testing the car, and to be honest, it would be good if we could see the process of what went into actually making the car. But I guess it's a long movie, so we just have to stick to the testing. And then of course Ken Miles doesn't go to Le Mans, and they lose. And I do like that this happens, because it happens about an hour in, and it gives good context for just how hard winning Le Mans is. Firstly, I would say, Michael, do you like that plot point? Because I think it's a decent plot point.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of have that second act thing, especially when I guess with this film it is just about a bunch of people doing a race. So it's sort of like having those twists and turns is not only good, but yeah, I think it's necessary to make it something a bit more than just like, oh look, they built a car, oh it goes well, like, and they introduce these kind of conflicts, and and then twists and turns. Love it.
Yeah. There is an issue though. Shall I tell you what that issue is?
Yes.
Ken Miles. In real life.
Oh, his surname is Miles. I just realized that's nominative determinism right there.
That's great. You'll love to see it. It's like Scott Speed, the American racing car driver.
It's like Johnny Rockhard, the porn star, christened Johnny Rockhard.
Is that actually?
No, I'm pretty sure that's his porn name.
Yeah, I mean,
imagine if that's how it worked with like every single career, like the same as with porn. You had to like pick a name for when you get into a career.
Yeah, Arsene Wenger, managing Arsenal.
Is that? Yeah, that's a good one actually.
Yeah, that is a good one. But I think I love Scott Speed as well though. Scott Speed, the American
drug dealer.
No, Formula One race. He might as well have been a drug dealer considering how good he was. Nah, that's a bit unfair. He was decent, Scott Speed. He was decent. Anyway,
that is a good name though. Yeah.
Sorry, what do you say?
Sorry, I was just gonna say that is a good name.
Yeah.
So I am with you.
Anyway, Ken Miles. The issue is in real life, he actually did go to Le Mans in 1965. So that whole thing about he can't go, he's not American, he's not clean cut, just an absolute lie from the movie.
Bold-faced lie.
And the thing is, there's some aspects of the movie which we'll get into which aren't true either, but this was particularly egregious because it's like that's a pretty core point in the movie. It's like, you didn't take this guy, the drivers didn't drive the car right, so therefore they lost. But the fact is, he did go in 1965, and Ford. Yeah, they were right, by the way. No, I don't think any Ford car finished, and he had a gearbox issue in the race which stopped him from finishing. So yeah, you could still go to Le Mans and have that gearbox issue.
I think one of the things actually, and that's another thing about this film being a film as opposed to a real life, is that you have the villain character. Which I do find it is the moment in the film which is the moment where you become most aware that you are watching kind of like a Hollywood film, because you have like the literally he's the villain, like his job is just to antagonize the main characters. I can't even remember his name or much about him apart from just that whenever anything goes wrong he's always there twirling his little villain mustache, and obviously he's the one I think who kind of agitates to make it so Miles can't go to Le Mans. So I guess they were like, if it's a gearbox, well, that's not as interesting because it's not like a villain. The gearbox can't be a villain. So like, let's have this villain character, this evil executive, be the one who stops him.
I get why you want to do it. Like, I get why, because having him, that scene at the end of the movie when you get to Le Mans for the first time is not as impactful if you go to Le Mans and you've already been there and like an hour later. You want the big crescendo of the movie to be, wow, we're racing in Le Mans. We're finally here and we're going to win, etc. Like, because if you go to it like an hour previously, and maybe also it would cost more. Like, I was thinking that when they just showed like him listening on the radio, it's like, oh, you're saving a bunch of money not having to film this. All the Ford cars crashing out. You are saving so much money.
Actually, yeah, that is true, actually.
Yeah, but, just have him listened on the radio.
It's good for them, though, saving money. Sometimes I appreciate when a film saves money, because I'm like, that's clever.
Yeah. And of course, the executive, that didn't really happen. What was he called again? He was like Leo Bebe, I believe. I believe that was his name.
Oh, like baby, because he's such a baby.
He was such a baby. Leo Bebe. This is such a weird surname. Beebe. Leo Bebe. How about that for a surname, Michael?
Yeah, that's a surname. Can't argue that, Luke. It's a fine surname.
The thing is, I don't know if it is a fine surname. I don't know if it is, but anyway, yeah.
Lots of people have weird surnames, though.
Yeah, Leo Beebe did not actually, stop Miles from racing in Le Mans in 1965, and he did race in 1966, of course. And I think obviously when Shelby, here's another thing I appreciate about the movie. Because Shelby is correct, because he goes back to Ford, of course, and this did happen in real life. Like the Ford cars didn't finish, and Le Mans in 1964 for Ford was terrible. He goes back and says, in motor racing you cannot rule by committee. Of course you can ask everyone for feedback, but if the racing division is having to ask the manufacturer about what they can and can't do, then it slows the whole operation down, and it basically hamstrings the team. And that what he says to him is entirely accurate. That's how it works in real life. An incredibly
that's why we're fascists. So we support, you can't just have the committee. You've got to have one central leader who knows what he's doing.
And that's how it works in Formula
politics.
1. Yeah, and politics. Yeah, sound like Anakin Skywalker. Like, why can't just one person decide?
Yeah,
when he's with
I am the card maker.
Okay, maybe need to work on that one. Okay, but basically, that the reason why I say yes, this is entirely accurate, because this was the case with Toyota when they entered Formula 1 back in 2002. They had a massive budget. They were determined to topple Ferrari and challenge Honda, who were in the sport at the time. And this is in the good old days, back when manufacturers actually wanted to enter Formula 1. Nowadays that they all just leave because they recognise that there's they want to sell like electric cars and they want to show how sustainable they are, and now every manufacturer wants to pull out because they realise racing in Formula 1 doesn't really do that. But yeah, back in the day, you had cars like Renault, BMW, and Honda and Toyota, who joined back in 2002. And Toyota basically, like I said, they had this massive budget. They wanted to topple the great Ferrari team. But the issue was everything had to be approved by the bosses back in Japan, and that caused issues, particularly as the factory was in Germany. So communication was an issue alongside the lack of centralized decision making. Like, imagine if you're trying to, of course, Formula 1, it's a very demanding sport, millions of pounds, incredibly just intelligent people working on this, and every time you want to make a big decision, you have to ask people back in Japan. And of course they're 12 hours away from you or whatever. So yeah, it was a massive issue for Toyota when they first went into Formula 1, and that is why Toyota basically never won a race in Formula 1. They were in their last race was 2009. They never won a race 8 years, and even though they had a big budget, and it was for that reason that they pulled out, and of course and the global recession had an impact as well. So yeah, when Shelby is talking about why Ford loses out to Ferrari, it's true. Like, get rid of the committees, stop going back to the head people, back in Michigan. Just let's focus on the racing division. Leave that to themselves, and that's how basically things work in motorsport if you want to be successful. And also, Shelby is right that Ferrari would also have been terrified of Ford being the quickest down the Mulsanne Straight, as Enzo Ferrari, as you could tell from that quote before, prioritized the engine above everything else, like how quick the car can go down a straight. That was his whole thing. So that would, I don't know if the Ford got the highest speed down the Mulsanne Straight. I assume that bit's accurate. That bit would have been accurate as well. So I think overall that scene, I was like, it was a good scene. It was good when Henry Ford goes, let's go to war. Like, Ford have been to war before. Let's go to war again. And that is exactly how that meeting would have gone down. It's entirely accurate as well.
Yeah, I do like how they kind of communicate the politics, I guess, of this this kind of industrial corporate politics, and obviously not just internal but external. Obviously, the way that these companies would try to get under each other's skin and try to counteract each other, and obviously inside how there's obviously lots of particularities to how it should be managed. So yeah, I think that obviously is what makes it more interesting. Because obviously, if it was just people going talking about the mechanics of the car and stuff, then that wouldn't be as interesting to somebody like me. Yeah. But the fact that obviously I can understand politics.
The politics, basically the politics is always involved in motor racing. So yeah, I mean it's interesting to me as well, and I think it is generally interesting, which is why the movie's good, because you can have that tension. And it is again accurate in motorsport. Politics is a massive thing, and how much money you can get from your manufacturers, what you can do, what can't you do, is often the reason why teams are successful and teams aren't. Like with Mercedes, for instance, again, they're very successful. Like Ross Brawn basically had to ask, I think it was their parent company's Daimler Mercedes Benz or something, that he asked them back in, I want to say, the 2011 season for hey, we need 30 million more pounds per year if we want to be successful. So can you give us this 30 million pounds? And they've said yes, and that contributed to why they were so successful. But yeah, just basically money and politics is a key reason as to why motorsport teams are successful or aren't successful. So yeah, and as you say, Michael, for someone who doesn't know a lot about motorsport, that can be fun. So full marks for all that. So Shelby then takes Henry Ford for a ride. Do you love it when he starts crying in the car, Michael?
Yeah, I think that is a good scene. And also, I mean, I guess obviously the way Shelby kind of responds is if he thinks that Ford might be upset. I think obviously it's kind of predictable that he's actually crying because he's overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. And I think also it kind of like on the subject of like communicating how fast they're really going. I think it is a good scene to kind of like get into your head of like imagine how insane it would actually be to just be driven for like a short amount of time by one of these super fast drivers, and how like crazy that would be for somebody who's never experienced it before. Yeah, so I like that. How new it would be.
I watch some videos sometimes with like F1 drivers like driving road cars with like, I don't know, a celebrity guest like in the passenger seat, and every single time that like the celebrity guest or a presenter or whatever, or the maybe it's even their teammates sometimes, it's just like, whoa, slow down, what the hell are you doing? Like, I don't know, it must be incredibly like, it must feel incredibly dangerous to go to sit in the passenger's seat while somebody's going so fast, and especially going possibly the fastest car on the planet at that point, when especially in the 60s when cars weren't as fast as today. So yeah, I did like that scene, and of course you get the whole cliche again. If Ken Miles wins Daytona, he gets to drive the car, and Shelby doesn't. He has to forgive his whole company, and yeah, it's a bit shit because it's cliche, and of course it didn't happen. Like, Ken Miles was racing in 65, he would definitely also be racing in 66 as well. Shelby would not need to put his car company up for sale. But what is true is Ken Miles did win Daytona. So that's pretty key, Michael. He did. So that bit's accurate, though. And yeah, I just asked myself this. I don't know why, if Ford is so committed to winning Le Mans and beating Ferrari, why he won't put his best drivers in. Like, surely that would be his top priority.
It's one of those kind of like, I feel like the whole led by donkeys narrative, like the idea that, man, the people at the top, they just don't get it, and they've got to be like told how to. Yeah.
But the thing is, in real life, like, he did put his best right. Ken Miles was never not going to be in the car, like he always was. So yeah, basically what happens is we get into the last 50 minutes of I think it's about 50 minutes, right? That's the race at Le Mans.
Yeah. It was kind of surprising because. Obviously, the second time I was watching, I was keeping an eye on the time, and I was like, "Oh wow, we're already at Le Mans." And I was like, "I can't believe we've still got quite a while until it's over."
Yeah, it's a big final battle, Ford versus Ferrari, and you get the typical battle at the front, just what you would expect, really. I mean, his door shutting on the first lap.
Yeah, that was. I really like that because obviously it's kind of like they established earlier on the idea of like, oh, you're not in trouble. And I should say, actually, I didn't know the story of Ken Miles going into this, so. No. They established earlier on this whole idea of like the threat of being trapped in your car when it's on fire. And then obviously his door won't shut, which is creating attention. And then obviously they hammer the door shut. And I think what they were trying to do there is for the people who didn't know the story. So they'd have a moment of like, oh, this is something which could potentially be dangerous and could cause an issue because they've now hammered the door shut and they've set up. So I think that was intentional. And obviously
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Okay. Because for me, as somebody who didn't know the story, my thought was, they're trying to kind of communicate the idea of maybe something will go wrong.
It's because it happened in real life.
Oh, really? Okay.
In the first lap of the race.
Yeah, that probably means it wasn't intentional then.
Yeah. No, in the first lap of the race, it really was the case that his door wouldn't shut and he had to come into pit to get it sorted. Wow. So that's a fun little story that they included. So I did like the storyline with the brakes, though. The genius move to replace them because the brakes. I can't imagine how much of a pounding the brakes take around Le Mans when it's basically just two massive straights and some corners in between. Like, it's God, the brakes must go through fucking hell. And so I can replacing the brakes so he can overtake, and that makes sense. I like that storyline. That's good. And so then basically what happens is all the Ferraris are out. This allows Miles to win easily, but of course he's slowed down, Michael. He's slowed down by Leo Beebe. Because the
villain.
The villain. He wants to take a photograph, and then he loses because of the technicality. And I have to say, it's one of the most, it's just an incredibly stupid technicality. I have to say, I didn't know what happened at the end of this race before I saw it, but that was, I can't believe that was a rule. Like, I have been watching motor racing for ages. That is something that is completely foreign to me. Like, because the person started further back, that means that when they finish at the same time, that means that person wins. Just the most stupid rule I've ever seen. And they should have had why not just have a camera on the finish line just to make sure? I don't know, just or just give it to the person who was winning in the previous lap. Just fuck. I'm. You know what? Even though this happened in 1966, Michael, I'm still mad.
Yeah, you just confirmed that. So that actually is something which happened in reality, then.
Yeah, that happened. That did happen in real life. I mean, we'll go through now what happened in real life. But yeah, basically, just on the movie for a sec, I think we should have got a scene of Leo Beebe like looking at the rule book, like figuring out what he could do to ensure his outcome would happen. Like, it's
just so funny how evil he is.
Yeah, it's an interesting ending, and one, of course, that did happen in real life. But as I'm going to go through, there are some other elements that were missed out during the race. So, are you ready, Michael?
Yes, I am, Luke.
So, Michael, during the night, so this is the night part of the race, obviously, because it's 24 hours. The Ferrari started to suffer from overheating. When the Nart P3 retired from fourth, that's a Ferrari car, I believe, with a broken gearbox at 3 a.m., and the Philip Pinetti car of Maris/Muller from fifth an hour later, the Ferrari challenge was spent. There would be no privateer saviours for the marquee this year. At the halfway mark, the Ford MK2s held the top 4 places, which were Miles and Hume. That was, of course, Ken Miles and Denny Hume. Dan Gurney and Grant, Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon, and then Buckman and Hutchison. So basically, the Ford MK2s had a 1, 2, 3, 4 at like 3 a.m. in the morning, with the Ford GT40s in 5th, 6th, and 8th. And yeah, basically, also the nearest Ferrari was Bandini Goucher, who were, what position were they in, Michael? They were in position 12. So yeah, the thing is, you see Bandini. Of course, he's winning and his car blows, but that's not actually what happened. They were in 12th position. They were nowhere near the lead. So again, it's just kind of it kind of gets that bit wrong. The Ferraris were never close to winning that, and the Fords had it in the bag basically right from the get-go. This was complete domination from Ford in this race. And this is correct, of course. Ford told their car to drop to 4-minute laps, but Gurney and Miles kept racing hard for the lead. What could have been a procession was anything but for Ford. So, at 9 a.m, the Gurney-Grant car, which had been dicing for the lead with Miles and Hume against strict team orders, retired from first when their car blew a head gasket. So, this is what actually happened in the race, Michael. So, there was actually another Ford pairing, which was, of course, Dan Gurney and Grant, who were battling with Ken Miles and Denny Hume for the lead. So that they weren't in this movie, Dan Gurney and Grant. They weren't battling for the lead at all. Like, it was just portrayed like, as soon as the Ferraris went, Ken Miles had an easy victory, but that wasn't the case. In real life, you had another Ford car who were battling for the lead. And I thought that could have been... That's perfectly set up for the movie then, if you have that pairing was backed by the evil executive, Leo Beebe. Like, okay, the Ferraris had gone, but you still had the challenge of beating this other Ford car. With Gurney and that's the thing. Like, it says here they were dicing for the lead against strict team orders. So the team were this happened in real life. So you could have a situation where like Leo Beebe is saying, hey, Miles and Hume, back off. Like, Ken Miles, back off. You're staying in second. Don't dice for the lead. And he starts battling with him. And that could have been a fun few scenes, but they just completely cut Gurney and Grant out of the race. And I think that's just a massive missed opportunity, because it would have happened in real life, and it would have added credence to all this narrative that Ken Miles was been hamstrung by the Ford executives. So yeah, I think that's just reading about what happened. That's a massive missed opportunity. And anyway, so of course Gurney and Grant, they retired from first when their car blew a head gasket. So yeah, they retired, and that's like 9 a.m. So yeah, with a few hours to go, that meant Miles and Hume were in the lead, which of course they were in the movie. And that left Ford with only 3 MK2s left, running 1, 2, 3, which is of course what happens in the movie, as all the GT40s had retired as well. So yeah, only the 3 MK2s were left, but they were first, second, and third, so that was fine for Ford. And yeah, basically now we get onto the final bit of the race. So with the field covered, it was now that Leo Beebe, the Ford racing director, contrived to stage a dead heat by having his 2 lead cars cross the line simultaneously. The ACO told him this would not be possible, given the staggered starting formation. The number 2 car would have covered 20 metres further and thus be the race winner, but Beebe pushed on with his plan anyway. Okay, so again, this bit is true. Like, it's true, he did, and he was actually told about it, that, oh no, that means your second place car will win, but he went with it anyway. At the last pit stop, the Mark IIs were still in the front. Ken Miles and Denny Hulme were leading, followed by Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon, holding station on the same lap. The gold Buckman Hutchinson car was third, but 12 laps behind, which is of course what happens in the race. Ken Miles was told to ease off to allow Bruce McLaren to catch up with him. Just before 4 p.m. it started to drizzle. As it turned out, the McLaren's number 2 car crossed the finish line just ahead and was declared the winner. Ken Miles, upset about the team orders, lifted off to allow McLaren to finish a length ahead. Okay, so that's what actually happened then, I guess. So he lifted off to allow Bruce McLaren to finish a length ahead. So it turns out, so from what I can tell from this, it seems like that the team, that would have happened. Like, if they had gone across the same line, like, Bruce McLaren still would have won, but it seems like Ken Miles lifted off anyway, so that rule didn't come into place, if what I'm reading is correct. But if they had finished neck and neck, that rule which happened in the movie would have happened. So I guess it's not that big a lie, but it's kind of a lie at the same time. So you're following this, Michael, aren't you?
Yeah, don't worry, I've got it. So,
right,
okay. Yeah, like I said, I mean, that I agree with you pretty much everything. I sign off on everything you say. It wasn't too much of a lie, but yeah.
Yeah. But so overall, I guess on the ending of the race, yes, I think there's the key elements were there. Like, they get a lot of what happened in the race accurately, but again, you're missing like a perfect opportunity to have, the car that the bigwigs at Ford want to win, which was Dan Gurney and Grant. And they could be dicing with the lead with Miles, and you had Leo Beebe backing them, and then their car blows because maybe he's pushing it too fast, and Ken Miles knows not to put, like, it's a perfect narrative, and it just feels like a missed opportunity. But yeah, overall, and also Ferrari, they were never in with a chance of winning either, were Ferrari. But yeah, apart from that, it's I think it's broadly accurate, so I guess we give them props for that. But at the same time, that's why this movie was made, because the actual story is fascinating. So yeah, that's the race at Le Mans, and then we go to the end of the movie, and of course Ken Miles dies, and there's a nice line from one of the engineers, which is like, so sometimes they just don't get out. And that's the true thing about racing, particularly back in those days. That's what racing was. Sometimes the people just don't get out the car and they just die, and that's just how it was. It was, again, just crazy how brutal the sport was and how stupid it was. And basically that's the plot. I will say this though, and I kind of hinted at it when talking about the race. What is this movie called, Michael? What is this movie called?
Ford vs Ferrari.
There's not a lot of Ferrari.
Yeah, you're right, actually.
In this Ford v Ferrari movie. Obviously, Enzo Ferrari's at the beginning and at the end of the race. And I like the nod he gives to Miles, but the thing is, he wasn't at the race in real life. And, okay, that's fine. It's not that big a deal, I think. But you consider that, of course, Ferrari provides the motivation for Ford to get into Le Mans. But Ferrari aren't involved in the last race at all. Like, Ford easily beat them. Like, Ford just smacked them around. Like, it's not even a contest. And that's the thing. I think about, like, the Ferrari element. They're not in the movie that much either. Like, Enzo Ferrari isn't... We don't constantly go back to Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah. Imagine if you watched Godzilla vs. King Kong and there was this little King Kong.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be like, well, is this just Godzilla's movie? And that's what it feels like. And then you figure... Well, then you look in real life and you figure, like, Ferrari are in it even less than what was portrayed in the movie. And, Ford easily beat them. It's really a movie about Ford, and in real life it was even more about Ford.
They should have called it Le Mans. They should have called it Ford at Le Mans.
Yes,
that's a good title.
That would have been more accurate. Yeah, Ferrari just... They are overstated in the movie, and even then, they're not in it that much. So, Ferrari for me was just kind of a pointless rival to have. You can have him... You can give, the motivation at the beginning for Ford to start, and you can have the mention here and there, but don't make the whole movie like Ford v Ferrari, when Ferrari aren't in the movie that much, and like I said, in real life, weren't even in it as much as portrayed in the movie. But here's the thing, Michael. There was this complaint after the movie came out, which was people look at what we're viewing this movie from. What perspective we're viewing it from. We're not viewing it from, the underdog Ferrari, who build cars the right way, who aren't like Ford, who've got millions of pounds to spend around like the brutish Americans. We're viewing it from the American perspective, like the big bad guys at Ford versus the elegance, the beauty of Ferrari. And we're viewing it from the Ford's perspective. And many people would like complain. I was like, oh, this is American, cinema. This is Hollywood. Everything has to be from the American perspective. They always have to be the good guys, etc. And I just want to know what do you think of that?
Yeah, actually, I think that is a good point. I mean, yeah, definitely part of it is that obviously this was a film made for principally American audiences, so I guess it would make sense that they'd want to show the American and of course English team, which is probably going to be the other big market, as the good guys. But yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is,
I don't think it is a good point.
Well, I mean, okay, so this is my other concern about it, and I don't know if this is kind of where you're thinking, but also I kind of feel like Ford kind of are the underdogs, and that they're sort of like the everyman's car.
I wouldn't say they're the underdogs, really.
But yeah, I feel like Ford's more populist, whereas Ferrari's more like elitist. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I mean, maybe not.
Well, why do you think it's a bad point,
I mean,
Luke?
I don't know how you can be like elitist when Ford have got so many millions of... Well, the point is that Ford... Where is the interest... Like, it is an interesting story. It is, in my opinion. And where does the interest come from? It doesn't come from Ferrari already being in Le Mans and like being challenged by Ford and then losing. It comes from Ford getting into motorsport. And, you know, they won like 5 Le Mans in a row. And isn't it fascinating to see how it all began? And it is true how it all began. Ford got into motorsport because of Ferrari, because of the spite from Ferrari. And, you know, in real life, like I said, Ferrari weren't involved that much. And in the movie, they're not involved that much really either. So, like, this is the thing. If you want it, it's not a case of, you tell it from the perspective of Ford and because it's American, because it's Hollywood, etc. And you don't tell it from the perspective of Ferrari because they're the foreigners, etc. It's like the interesting story is telling it from the perspective of Ford. That's where the story comes from. That's why this whole thing has been made into a movie. So that's the thing. I'm fine with it. And yes, you could argue there's some bits where, for example, you know, Shelby tricks the Ferrari team with the bolt and, you know, steals their stopwatches that are played off as like funny, but, you know, from another perspective it would be this guy's just trying to sabotage the Ferrari team. And there's also Bandini in the car. He looks really pompous when he's driving next to like Ken Miles. He's so pompous when the way he looks over to Ken Miles, like, you're racing me in a Ford, I'm in a Ferrari, which I doubt would have happened. Of course it wouldn't have, because, you know, Bandini was in 12th position. But yeah, I just think this, you know, the story is a great story to tell. You know, the reason why the movie exists is because the story is great. You know, Ford wanting to beat Ferrari at their own game did happen because of, you know, what Ferrari said to Ford. And yeah, I think therefore, you know, you have to follow it from Ford's perspective, because otherwise, I mean, there's not really a Ferrari perspective. There isn't, because they just keep on racing at Le Mans and they finished like 12th at Le Mans in 66. Like, that wouldn't be interesting, would it? Do you see the point I'm trying to make, Michael? Do you see my point?
Yeah, I get you, yeah. And I think you're right, actually. There isn't a Ferrari story, and I think that's a good way of putting it. There isn't. So I suppose, I mean, in some way, what you said that was, I mean, I guess it wasn't criticism, but the fact that obviously there isn't much Ferrari in this film is, yeah, a perfect counter to the claim that this is in some way being mean to Ferrari. You know, Ferrari needed to have done better. I mean, maybe there is a great Ferrari story out there. It's just not this story.
There's definitely Ferrari stories out there, but not this one. This one, it was better told from Ford's perspective, even though they were the rich, you know, Americans who, you know, just came in and smashed everything up and won 5 in a row. I mean, the fact is, it's fascinating from their perspective, and that's what should always matter, or it should be the first priority, really. Okay, Michael, so now let's talk about the racing action. I think that's good. Did you enjoy the action on the track? Because I
traction.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen any other racing movies? But I thought that, I thought, judging by other racing movies, this one did a very good job.
Well, I've seen the Fast and Furious movies, which are the pinnacle of racing. But aside from that, not really, no, that I can think of. But yeah, I did think this film, I mean, it did a good job at making it exciting. You know, it did with the loudness and obviously the bits when, like, I don't know, it's like really hot and it's like, and you feel like the car's going to explode every second because it's just too much. And I did think it pretty much succeeded at what I wanted it to, which is, for example, I mean, we've already mentioned it. So Any Given Sunday made me feel pretty much exactly the way that I felt about American football going out of it as I did going into it. You know, I always thought that American football was just a bunch of fat, stupid meatheads running into each other and smashing each other in the face. And that's basically the impression I got from Any Given Sunday. This film, obviously I didn't have like a negative impression of sports, but, you know, I mean, my big criticism has always been like, it looks kind of boring, because actually from a kind of outside perspective, from a removed perspective, it just doesn't look that interesting. Whereas what this film did is it went in there and it kind of got into what it would actually be like for the characters, and got to the physical strain it would put upon the characters and the mental strain. And I thought, you know, it did a really good job at communicating that, and I think that's pretty much what it needed to do to make this sport seem interesting to me, and I did think it looked interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think this did a really good job. I loved, when they were racing at Le Mans at night. I thought that was really great stuff there. I enjoyed that a lot, and I compare it to another racing movie that I've seen, Rush. I don't know if you know about that. Came out in 2013.
Yeah, I have heard of it.
Yeah, Daniel Bruhl and Chris Hemsworth, about the 1976 F1 battle between Niki Lauda and James Hunt for the World Championship. This was better when it comes to the action. I do think. Like, I think back to that movie and I was kind of frustrated about how the action wasn't as good as I thought it should be. But this movie was good. Like, Rush is still fine. Like, I like it, but this movie, in terms of the racing action, was better. So yeah, I'll give it a big thumbs up for that.
Is it better than Rush Hour though?
I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
I don't want no trouble.
Okay. Wow, Mr. Yanoshi. Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So that's the action. Yeah, thumbs up. Like we said, let's get into the characters now. So Matt Damon plays Carroll Shelby, and here's the thing about. I'll just say off the top about the characters. Like, a lot of the reviews talked about how good the characters were, and it's like, oh, this isn't just a racing movie. This is a movie about the characters. And I can understand, like, I like the dynamics, like the politics of it, but in terms of the actual characters, I just found them like quite two-dimensional, to be honest. Like, Carroll Shelby, he wants his guy to win. He's a straight-talking Texan. Like, Ken Miles as well. Like, he says, "Oh, bloody hell, you're an arsehole," quite a lot. But he's quite an eccentric, difficult driver, as he's called. But he doesn't really have an arc either. He just gets in the car and drives it. Like, the characters, I guess, Ken Miles is a bit more interesting than Carroll Shelby. But yeah, I think basically. That's the thing. I'm looking at the reviews, and the reviews are like, oh, what makes the movie is the characters. But I don't know. I just found the characters not that interesting. Like, the political dynamics of it, that's interesting. But I don't know. The characters, again, they just seemed a bit meh. Particularly Carroll Shelby as Matt Damon. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much exactly agree. I hate to be boring and non-contrarian, but yeah, I felt exactly that about the characters in this film. Obviously, they were, they weren't bad characters by any means, but they felt kind of just like characters that served only to facilitate the plot. And as you said, the plot is good, but yeah, the characters themselves, I never got too concerned with. And definitely, I think Christian Bale's a bit more interesting. But even then, like when he died, for example, and again, I'm going into somebody who didn't know he was going to die, so him dying was like not exactly, it was a shock, but it wasn't something where I was like, oh no, I love that character. I was just like, well, the film's over, so you might as well die.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of how I felt, unfortunately. I say it's unfortunate, but it's like, oh, he died, there we go. Ford v Ferrari could have just been, this is from Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle. Ford v Ferrari could have just been a sports story, dramatising an interesting chapter in racing, and it would have been fine, but in showing Ford and his minions' constant interference in the dedicated work of Miles and Shelby, that's good, I like it, that's the political stuff. This James Mangold film becomes a tale of the souls battling with the soulless. Yeah, I guess that works, but this is the thing I kind of disagree with. Erin Cohen gave the film a B, saying Ford v Ferrari excels at evoking the sheer thrill of the race. Yeah, I agree. Like, the action scenes are great. A body moving through time and space, as one character says, and it's compelling enough in those moments to make the case that nothing beats the thrill of competition. Oh, sorry, no, it's not that. It's not that one. I agree with that. That's accurate, I think. But it's Variety's Peter de Bruges, who I disagree with, who praised the racing sequences and performances of Bale and Damon, writing, the best sports movies aren't so much about the sport as they are about the personalities, and these two go big with their performances. Again, that's where I'm like, is it really like the personality? Like, what I can appreciate, again, fucking Christian Bale had a better personality as Ken Miles. He's a bit eccentric, but the personality of Matt Damon as Carroll Shelby, I mean, he's just like...
Yeah, he's just such an iconic character.
Yeah, he's just like... he's a race car driver who becomes a team boss who wants to win, and he's a straight talking Texan who he's loyal. Like, I don't know how that's entertaining. Like, and the family dynamic of Ken Miles, talking to his son, that's decent and all, but it seemed like it's quite cliche. All the same, I will say. Oh, do you remember that scene with his wife who just like randomly speeds up out of nowhere?
Oh yeah, that was a weird scene.
That was weird because it's like she has said before that, oh, I don't mind if you race, like go ahead and race because you'll be awful if you don't, you'll be miserable. And then when she gets really mad when he has a talk with Matt Damon.
Yeah, and she says something like, I don't know, like something about how she doesn't want him to lie to her based on because she doesn't want to think that he doesn't want her to know that he wants to do something else. That was pretty much, which is it's quite a convoluted objection. But the weird thing is, like, it also doesn't even, like, relate in any way to his character. Yeah. Like, because I guess, the point being, I mean, I can kind of, like, it's a concept I can kind of get my head around of, like, sometimes you'll get somebody who doesn't do what they want to do because of their obligations as, like, to their wife or their family, and she doesn't want him to be somebody like that who secretly wants to do this thing. But then obviously that as a thing is kind of not part of his character, and it would have been a substantial part of his character if it actually was part of his character. But as you say, the whole, like, he loves his family thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of like, especially seeing as he does die, it does kind of feel like it's one of those things of like, oh, you give somebody a family and it means you're supposed to care about them automatically.
Yeah.
It does make his family feel a little bit like props.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. It does feel like that. Like, yes, this family, he has a family, so we have to care about them now. Like, he's relatable, etc. Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. It just doesn't.
You know what? Actually, like, I do want to talk a bit about him dying, because I was thinking about this the first time I saw it.
Right.
It kind of felt to me a little bit like, it sounds strange, but like when he dies, it feels almost like they were like, well, he did die, so we've got to include it in there, because, like, of course we've got to include it in there. But then at the same time, just narratively, it comes across as, like, weird. Like, it literally does come across as kind of just... I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing.
Well, they should have had this theme, and they have it in bits and pieces. They should have had a theme about racing. It can take you in, like, the blink of an eye. And they do it in bits and pieces, but that would have meant... that would have been better.
Yeah, because
it was the truth. Like, and they again, there's, like, when the guy says, "Oh, sometimes they don't get out," and, like, Matt Damon talks, about being terrified of going down the straight, the Mulsanne Straight, in the dark when it's raining and you can't see anything. Like, if you make that an overall theme, just how dangerous racing is and the thrill of it, and that's not really, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Accentuate, fucking
I get what you're saying.
Illustrated.
Communicated?
Communicated, that's a good one. Yeah, communicated enough. So that's an issue.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Because that's the thing, I remember the first time I was watching it, like, I was like, oh, is he going to die? And I was like, oh, it seems like he wouldn't die, because this is obviously based on a real life story, and, like, in real life, people don't die in these dramatic moments. And then obviously he doesn't, I'm referring to, of course, in the race itself. And then later on, he just dies, like, just in, like, almost as, like, an afterthought. Yeah. And I do remember the first time I saw this film being like, that was a bit weird. But I think it's...
Part of the theme, how just racing is dangerous.
That would have been a good way to incorporate
it's not really there, like I said. Could have been communicated. Use that word better. So, Michael, I think that's it. Basically, just some of the character arcs. All the characters, they're pretty standard stuff. Even though one's a bit eccentric, and there's not really arcs there, like the politics, the different characters. That's much more interesting, to be honest. A lot of those, and this goes against, like, what a lot of critics say, but a lot of those family scenes for me, they just felt not really needed, a bit cliche. But anyway, Michael, we'll finish off now with our conclusions. So I'll go first then. I think it'll make a nice change if I do. So basically, Michael, I think the story is just a great story to tell. I think, yes, this really happened. Like I said, the reason why this movie exists is because the story of Ford, wanting to get into Le Mans and eventually winning, and, like, how it finished. Like, it's a great story to tell. And, Ken Miles obviously racing for them, then his death, and Carroll Shelby, being a famous Le Mans winner, helping his team get the victory. Like, and I think it's a case of, if you just execute the story well, then it can be a good movie, and it is. James Mangold and the writers, they just had to make sure they get it spot on, and they did. Like, it's a very competent, efficient movie. Kind of like how Ford ended up being, and that's how Ford just dominated Le Mans for half a decade. But this movie, it's not a classic. It's not going to go down in history, but it's very good for what it is. Like, I think a lot of the plot points make sense. How I've articulated how a lot of, like, Ford wanting to get into motorsport because of essentially the marketing, that's accurate. How the racing division can be scuppered by the higher ups getting involved, that can happen. And again, it's a bit shit how they say, Ken Miles couldn't race in 65 because he wasn't a clean cut American, when of course he did race in Le Mans in 1965 for Ford. But I think overall, the plot is decent, and what you expect, really. And again, they missed out on opportunities, I will say, and overstated the whole role of Ferrari quite well. And again, even in the movie, probably shouldn't be called Ford v Ferrari, because in the movie Ferrari isn't involved that much. But overall, I think it's decent. I have to say 8 out of 10 seems right for me. You know, it's like probably as much an 8 out of 10 as you could get from a movie. No, like I said, not a classic, not amazing, but will be, you know, good enough to watch and enjoy for 2.5 hours, as it were. And like you said, it doesn't really feel that long. So yeah, I think that's a fair rating, 8 out of 10 for Ford v Ferrari.
Yeah, so in a way, I pretty much agree with your assessment, although this is going to be an example of where how we would define certain, like, our rankings is possibly going to differ, because I do agree this is a well-made film. It is, obviously, like I say, a film doesn't feel its length. It is a film that is entertaining and has a lot of entertaining plot elements, but I pretty much stand by what I said at the beginning, which is this isn't one of those films that's, like, challenging or interesting or even, like, particularly, like, blows you away with its excitement. And with that said, I think it's just an enjoyable film, and one that, you know, it's a film. It's one of those interesting films which, like, I'd be totally happy to watch it at any point. And in theory, you know, based on rewatch value, if someone's watching this, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I don't mind. And yet at the same time, I'd never really, like, want to watch it. And I don't feel like it's going to be one of those films that kind of sticks with you. And for that reason, I'd say, you know, a film that does a little bit more is what I would consider to be an 8. But I do think this is a 7. I think I'd kind of consider it to be a quintessential 7 rather than a quintessential 8. I'm going to rank it, I guess, above Psycho, but below Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Ford versus Ferrari.
That's interesting, because I gave Once Upon a Time in Hollywood an 8 out of 10 as well.
Ah, yeah,
and,
see?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, I'm just rating movies higher, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. But, yeah, you said it wasn't interesting, and that's maybe where I disagree. I found it interesting. Like, the story is interesting.
I mean, it makes sense because you like it. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say, maybe I shouldn't say it's not interesting. I guess it's not, I guess it's not, like, interesting in a very complicated way. It's kind of, like, interesting in the same way that any competent kind of story is.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I do feel like, oh, it's competent, and that is that is enough, really. It's executed well, and the story, like I said, the initial story is interesting, so you just don't need to mess it up, and it can be an 8 out of 10. And there we go, it's an 8 out of 10. I will say again, the scenes when they're racing around Le Mans, that they're very good at night. That's very good. That's something that I guess, you know, isn't just competent. That's really
Actually, this film does have moments where it does go a little bit extra.
So, Michael, talking of extra, what movie are we doing next week?
Well, Luke, we're doing a film which I think is going to be an interesting one. Hopefully, who knows? I could see it being one of those ones which could get a decent number of views, and that is, of course, Joker.
Joker, yes, Joker. The
finally
Prince
here
of Crime returns. And we're going to be looking at that 2019 movie next week in our Oscar extravaganza. So yes, this week we have been reviewing Ford v Ferrari. A decent movie, but it doesn't quite hit the heights you would probably hope, especially for you. You can tell that's 7 out of 10 for me, because I'm interested in this stuff. Maybe gets a bit closer to what I want to see. But yeah, Michael, join us next week for Joker. Who have you been?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.